Hi, welcome to session 4 of GED 6001, Foundations of Leadership in Educational Issues. This week you'll be reading about innovation and change, and in particular, challenging the status quo. Your readings will discuss the following questions. How does a leader seek opportunities to grow and improve? How does a leader implement change? How do leaders make change and risk feel safer for their team? How do leaders use rumbling to their advantage? Today's devotional passage comes from the book of Luke, chapter 10, and is a story of the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan took a huge risk, modeled kindness and caring in his act of mercy. Let's read this passage together. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Before we begin, let's spend a few minutes in quiet meditation reflecting on the following questions. Leadership may involve risks or costs in order to change or innovate the status quo. What leadership behaviors do you find in this biblical passage? Why do you believe that Christ shared this particular story in this instance? And as a school counselor, who are your neighbors? At the time in history that this story was told, Samaritans were considered by Jews to be a lower class. The Jews did not like the Samaritans, and the Samaritans did not like the Jews, so there was a risk involved in helping a person who appeared to be a Jew. The Good Samaritan helped his neighbor without expecting anything in return. And there are no conditions as to who is our neighbor and who we help, because that's what leaders do. People do their best when there's change, people do their best when there's support to change the things the way they are. Staying the same breeds mediocrity at best and entropy at worst. As mentioned previously, we're going to learn about how leaders facilitate the change process in incremental steps. So one way that Kouzes and Posner talk about this is seizing the initiative, making something happen. In the School of Education, our accreditors ask us the question, how are you continuously improving for program effectiveness and candidate competence? This causes us to keep the conceptual framework concept of transformation at the forefront of our discussions on our leadership team. While in the past, it usually meant myself and the associate deans leading this work, we recently expanded our leadership team to 6 people, and this is our time to ask questions and challenging the way we've always done things around here. Sometimes they are hard conversations, and it takes a bit of time to reflect on how we might do something better, but without making something happen, it's pretty assured that we will never get better. Encouraging the initiative in others. By encouraging others to take leadership roles in change and innovation, you are giving them the opportunity to grow and develop as leaders. For those of us who are perfectionists or need control, this is particularly difficult because the project might not turn out as you anticipated, but it may turn out much better than you thought at first. So give some space, set up accountability measures, and let go so others have the opportunity to lead, learn, and hone their leadership skills. Individuals who criticize, particularly those who are not with us in the arena, who do not offer alternatives or suggestions for improvement, are not challenging the process. They are complaining. How you challenge the process is to ensure that you are ultimately making the shared vision of your team implementable. How are you motivating your team to be motivated to do their best? Think about this quote from the chapter. When it comes to excellence, it's definitely not what is rewarded gets done, but rather what is rewarding gets done, because we are intrinsically motivated human beings. Exercise outsight. Kouzes and Posner quote, "The only effective response from leaders is to anticipate the disruptions and get ahead of the curve." So what is outsight? We can no longer rely on old norms or ground rules. You can look online and will find hundreds of books on change, and all of them will tell you that we are in a world of disruption. Think about Uber, Amazon, Airbnb, and that the only way to survive is through being adaptive and flexible as an organization. Many of those ideas for innovation will come from outside your business or discipline. Sometimes those ideas come from collaboration with outside entities, sometimes from clients, sometimes it is forced from outside pressures. A good leader is always on the lookout for ways of looking at the world that may be different from long-held views or expectations. One of the ways in which to gather new ideas for innovation is to ensure that there are ways to gather ideas coming from both inside and outside of the organization. Don't be isolated in your own school. How will you work with a fourth grade team? How do you communicate social emotional learning lessons that could be incorporated into world history? How do new medical field findings impact school counseling? Leaders personally seize the initiative, encourage others to do the same, and actively look everywhere for great ideas. But you do not have to initiate all of the change. You should be encouraging everyone to accept the responsibility for innovation and improvement. When opportunity knocks, are you prepared to answer? Have you prepared your team to be able to step up to the plate and take on leadership for what needs to be done? Opportunities are all over the place. It's your job to search for the ones right to make a difference for your organization and for your shared vision. In talking about experimenting and taking risks, Kouzes and Posner say, you climb that mountain one hop at a time. You make progress incrementally. You break the long journey down into milestones. You move people forward step by step, creating a sense of forward momentum into small wins. A colleague of mine who recently passed away, Dr. Paul Heckman of UC Davis, made an impression on me early in my career as a principal. We were in the middle of lots of change in the district, and he talked about generating small wins way back in the 1990s. When you're in the middle of innovation and change, sometimes it's really difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And let's face it, if you're really serious about continuous improvement, you are never quite out of the tunnel. Along the way, there'll be setbacks and discouragement, so it's very important to think about celebrating the small wins along the way. Set some goals, and when you reach those goals, celebrate as a team. It might be as small as breaking through to some kids who have not been at school and you found a teacher they like to mentor them. It may be when you have completed 3 steps of your plan. It may be when you have increased 1 point on attendance or graduation rates. Particularly since we're all in education, we should be role modeling what lifelong learners do. Show curiosity about the world around us, that we're self-motivated to learn more, and we learn new skills to adapt to changing lifestyles and the changing world around us. We create a climate for learning by demonstrating inquiry and openness, patience, encouragement. A study from Christensen, Dyer, and Gregerson in 2009 suggests that where there are high-quality relationships at work, people engage in more behaviors that lead to learning. And finally, it takes strength and determination to deal with the adversities of life and leadership. How do you recover from setbacks? Because there will be setbacks. How do you keep on the path when there's criticism and or resistance? Because there's going to be criticism and there will be resistance. Angela Duckworth wrote about the act of persistence and the ability to carry on when the going gets tough. She spoke of this act of resilience as grit, or working strenuously towards the goal in spite of challenges, failure, and adversity. What's your grit level? The next part of the reading guide are some short videos which discuss innovation and change in today's schools. There are also exercises from the Dare to Lead text that set the stage for thinking about how well prepared your team is positioned to show brave rather than armored leadership characteristics. Finally, there is an exercise that allows you to reflect on your own curiosity and how you deal with the first draft assumptions you make and how you are working on providing a safe environment to tackle difficult issues.